The day my brother had security escort me out of the building I'd spent 12 years helping him build, not a single employee said a word. They all looked away, at the floor, at their screens, anywhere but at me. Not one of them knew I had written the original business plan on a kitchen table the night after our father's funeral. Not one of them knew I had worked every weekend for 3 years without extra pay, or that I'd turned down a 6-figure job offer to stay and make sure Mark's dream survived. 3 years after that humiliation, he walked into my office. But I'll get to that. My name is David, and this is the story of everything I built, everything I lost, and everything I found on the other side of betrayal. Mark and I grew up with nothing. Our father, James, worked construction his whole life and died with 2 things: calloused hands and a dream he never got to chase. He wanted his own company, a real one, with his name on the side of a truck. When he passed, Mark was 32 and I was 26, and we made each other a quiet promise at his graveside that we'd build what he couldn't. I believed every word of it. I wrote the business plan. I cold called the first clients. I stayed late when Mark went home. I skipped my own birthday 2 years running to meet project deadlines. I took 40% less salary than the market rate because we needed to keep cash in the business. When a major contract almost collapsed because of a supplier dispute, I drove for hours on a Sunday morning and fixed it myself. I never complained. We were building something together. That's what I told myself every single time it got hard. And then the company became successful. That's when everything changed. Mark's wife, Sandra, came from money. The moment the company crossed a certain threshold, she started whispering in his ear, "Family and business don't mix. David is too small time for where this company is going. You've outgrown him, Mark." At first, Mark pushed back. But slowly, weekend by weekend, I watched my brother become a stranger in a tailored suit. Meetings I used to run were reassigned. Clients I'd personally brought in stopped getting routed through me. My office got moved, twice, until I was in a corner that felt more like a storage room than a workspace. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself Mark would come around. I was wrong. One Thursday morning, his assistant called me into the boardroom. The entire executive team was seated around the table. Mark stood at the head of it, and the look on his face told me everything before he opened his mouth. "David," he said, "the company has outgrown you." Just like that. 12 years summed up in 5 words. I sat there for 3 full seconds unable to speak. Then security appeared in the doorway, and I walked out past every face I'd worked alongside for over a decade. Not one of them said goodbye. I had almost nothing. My savings ran dry inside for months. 3 banks rejected my loan applications. Old clients I'd personally built relationships with turned their backs, scared of losing Mark's contracts. For a brief, dark stretch, I thought about quitting entirely, walking away from the industry and starting over somewhere no one knew my name. Then a small contractor named Pete, someone I'd shown patience to years earlier, when everyone else dismissed him, called out of nowhere. "I have one project," he said. "It's not big, but it's yours if you want it." I took it without hesitation. That one project became 2, became 5. I treated every worker on every site like they mattered, because they did. I paid fairly. I kept every promise I made. And the word spread the way it only does when it's genuine, quietly, steadily, and permanently. Within 3 years, my company was one of the fastest growing construction firms in the entire region, built not on connections or inheritance, but on the one thing I'd always had: character. Then one afternoon, my assistant knocked on my office door. "Someone's here to see you," she said. "He doesn't have an appointment. He says he's your brother." Mark looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. The tailored suits were gone. His eyes were tired in a way that had nothing to do with exhaustion and everything to do with consequence. His arrogance had driven 3 major clients to competitors. Half his executive team had resigned. Sandra had left when the money got tight. The banks had stopped returning his calls. He sat across from my desk and said quietly, "I need your help." I looked at him for a long moment. I thought about every weekend, every missed birthday, every time I chose his dream over mine without a second thought. And then I let it go, not because it didn't hurt, but because carrying it any further would only weigh me down. "I'm not going to buy your company, Mark," I told him, "but I'll buy the equipment and keep your workers employed. They didn't do anything wrong." His shoulders dropped like something finally broke loose inside him. "I didn't lose my future the day you fired me," I said. "I found it." Mark had to face the consequences of every decision he'd made. Some lessons can't be taught. They can only be lived. We didn't become what we were overnight, but slowly, the way real things are rebuilt, we began finding our way back to each other. I forgave him. I just never forgot what I was capable of without him.